Hey everyone, welcome to Midnight Mystic Stories. I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow and helps us keep bringing more of the content you love. And be sure to comment below where you are tuning in from. Thank you and enjoy the video. The thing about dating apps is, they're like a box of chocolates, except instead of chocolates, it's mostly weirdos and disappointment. You know, the kind that promise a gourmet experience, but deliver something that resembles flavored wax. And Hinge. I thought Hinge was supposed to be different. Designed to be deleted, they say. More like designed to make you question your entire existence. Let me tell you, I went in with the lowest expectations humanly possible, thinking, hey, maybe I'll find someone normal. Someone who doesn't have a collection of taxidermied squirrels in their attic. Boy, was I wrong. So wrong. It all started innocently enough. I just moved to Denver for a tech job and felt like I was living in a permanent episode of House Hunters. Except instead of finding my dream home, I was endlessly scrolling through profiles, looking for someone who didn't list hiking as their only personality trait. I stumbled across Liam's profile, and he seemed decent. His pictures weren't filtered to oblivion. He had a real job, and he claimed to like indie movies and dogs. Seemed safe enough, right? His opening prompt was what I'm looking for. Someone to try new restaurants with, and I was sold. I was new to the city and craving food. We matched, and the conversation flowed easily. No awkward silences. No weird questions about my blood type. He suggested meeting up for brunch at this trendy place downtown, and I agreed. I even put on actual pants instead of my usual sweatpants and a hoodie uniform. A truly special occasion. The morning of the date, I even felt this tiny flutter of something like hope. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be a total train wreck. The restaurant was buzzing with the brunch crowd, all avocado toast and mimosas. I spotted Liam waiting near the entrance. He looked even better in person, tall, with his kind smile and these eyes that were way too intense for 11 a.m. He gave me a hug, and we sat down at a table near the window. The first hour was great. We talked about everything, from our jobs to our favorite travel destinations. He was funny, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. Maybe Hinge really was designed to be deleted, because I was starting to think I might actually delete it. Then, things took a turn. It started subtly. He started asking about my apartment, where it was, how safe the neighborhood was, if I had any roommates. Normal questions, but something about the way he asked them made me feel uneasy. He asked if I liked living on a high floor or a low floor. What kind of security system did I have? How many exits? The tone started to change to serious. Then the restaurant was getting empty, so the staff were doing final cleaning, and there were fewer people to potentially witness something. As he was asking about it, he starts acting like he already knew. He starts to tell me things about myself that no one would know. Like, he knew my childhood dog's name and my favorite kind of ice cream. And when I asked him how he knew these things, he just smiled and said that he was very observant and good with details. But that didn't make any sense. It was so specific, so personal. Things got weirder when he told me he had some old friends in the same apartment complex as me. When I told him I lived alone, he looked confused and asked me if I was sure. He told me he saw me walking my imaginary dog every morning. What was he talking about? It was all so bizarre. I decided I needed to get out of there. I made some excuse about needing to be somewhere else and stood up to leave. He looked disappointed, but he didn't try to stop me. He just smiled again, that unsettling, knowing smile, and said, "I'll see you around." The next few days were a blur of anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I left my apartment, I felt eyes on me. I started taking different routes to work, avoiding the park near my apartment. I even installed a security camera outside my front door. One evening, I was working late when I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of me sitting at my desk, taken from outside my window. The text read, "I told you I was observant." I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I called the police, showed them the picture, told them about Liam. They said they'd look into it, but without any concrete evidence. There wasn't much they could do. He probably just Googled you," one of the officers said dismissively. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the building, every rustle of leaves outside my window, made me jump. I kept replaying the date in my head, trying to figure out what I had missed, what red flags I had ignored. Then, around 3 a.m., I heard a noise outside my door, a soft scratching sound, like someone was trying to pick the lock. I grabbed a kitchen knife and crept towards the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked through and I froze in terror. It was Liam. He was wearing a dark hoodie, his face partially obscured by the shadows. He had a set of lockpicks in his hand, and he was methodically working on my door lock. I started shouting, screamed to him to leave me alone. He didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge me. He just kept picking the lock, his movements precise and deliberate. I called 911 again, screaming into the phone. It felt like an eternity before the police arrived. By then, Liam was gone. The lock was damaged, but he hadn't managed to get inside. The police searched the area, but they couldn't find him. I spent the next few weeks living in a state of constant fear. I changed my locks, installed an alarm system, and started carrying pepper spray everywhere I went. I deleted Hinge, along with every other dating app on my phone. I even considered moving, but I didn't want to let him win. The police eventually caught Liam. It turned out he had a history of stalking and harassment. He'd been using dating apps to find victims, targeting women who lived alone. He was finally arrested and charged with stalking, attempted burglary, and a whole list of other things. Even now, years later, I still think about Liam. I still have nightmares about that night, about his face in the doorway. It's a reminder that the internet is full of creeps and that even the most seemingly normal people can be hiding something sinister. And I will never ever swipe on Hinge ever again. That experience taught me to always be aware of my surroundings, to trust my gut, and never, ever underestimate the depths of human depravity. Next. My heart still races when I remember that Hinge profile. Not because the guy was hot or anything, but because it was the first thread in a series of events that turned my life sideways. Like, picture dominoes falling, but instead of colorful blocks, it was my sanity, sense of safety, and general faith in humanity all crashing down. I was your typical college student, stressed about exams, ramen noodle budget, and the eternal quest for a decent date. Hinge seemed like a slightly less chaotic option than some of the other apps. You know, designed to be deleted, and all that jazz. I wasn't looking for anything super serious, just someone cool to grab coffee with, maybe catch a movie. Enter Liam. His profile was pretty standard. A few pictures of him hiking, one with a dog, automatic points obviously, and a witty bio about loving obscure indie films and hating pineapple on pizza. Seemed normal enough. We matched, and the conversation flowed easily. He was funny, engaging, and didn't immediately bombard me with creepy pickup lines. We talked about our favorite movies, our dream travel destinations, and our shared love of dogs. After a few days of chatting, we decided to meet up for a drink at a bar near campus. The bar was crowded and loud, but I spotted him easily. He looked just like his pictures, maybe even a bit better in person. We hugged, grabbed a couple of beers, and settled into a corner booth. The first hour was great. We laughed, told stories, and discovered we had way more in common than I initially thought. He seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say, which was a refreshing change from some of the other Hinge dates I'd been on. But then, things started to get off. He started asking really personal questions, like about my family, my financial situation, and my living arrangements. I chalked it up to him just being curious, but it felt a little too intense for a first date. Then he started talking about his ex, not in a she was crazy kind of way, but in a really obsessive, almost unsettling way. He talked about how much he loved her, how they were meant to be together, and how he was still trying to win her back. He showed me pictures of her on his phone, and I couldn't help but notice that she looked a lot like me. Same hair color, same eye color, similar build. It was weird. I tried to change the subject, but he kept bringing her up. He started saying things like, "You remind me so much of her," and "I wish you could understand how much I miss her." It was making me super uncomfortable. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, he was gone. His drink was still there, but he was nowhere to be seen. I waited for about 15 minutes, thinking maybe he'd just stepped outside for a smoke or something, but he never came back. I tried calling and texting him, but he didn't answer. I was officially ghosted. Annoyed and slightly freaked out, I decided to just go home. As I was walking back to my dorm, I noticed someone following me. I couldn't see their face clearly because it was dark, but they were definitely keeping pace with me. I started walking faster, and they did too. I took a different route, and they followed me. I was terrified. I ran the rest of the way back to my dorm and locked myself inside. The next day, I tried to forget about the whole thing. I figured Liam was just a weirdo, and the person following me was probably just a coincidence. But then I started getting weird messages on social media. Anonymous accounts sending me creepy messages, saying things like, "I know where you live, and you can't hide from me." I blocked them all, but they just kept creating new accounts. I was starting to feel like I was being watched. Then came the gifts. Little things left on my doorstep. A single flower, a box of chocolates, a handwritten note with no signature. At first, I thought it was kind of sweet, but then the gifts started getting weirder. A lock of hair, a picture of me sleeping in my dorm room, a dead bird. It was escalating, and I was terrified. I went to the campus police, but they said there wasn't much they could do without any concrete evidence. They told me to just be careful and report anything else that happened. I started carrying pepper spray everywhere I went. I avoided walking alone at night, and I made sure to always tell someone where I was going. I felt like I was living in a horror movie. Then one day, I got a package in the mail. It was a small, wrapped box. Inside, there was a photo album. The album was filled with pictures of me. Pictures of me walking to class. Pictures of me eating in the dining hall. Pictures of me studying in the library. Every page was filled with pictures of me. And on the last page, there was a picture of Liam, smiling. I immediately called the police. This time, they took me seriously. They launched a full investigation, and they quickly identified Liam as their prime suspect. They tracked him down to an apartment a few blocks from campus. When they raided his apartment, they found a shrine dedicated to me. Pictures, notes, even some of my personal belongings that had gone missing from my dorm room. He was obsessed with me. The police arrested Liam, and he was charged with stalking and harassment. He eventually confessed to everything, including following me home from a bar and leaving the gifts on my doorstep. It turned out that he had been stalking other women before, women who looked like his ex-girlfriend. I was just the latest victim. The whole ordeal was traumatic. I had to testify in court, and I had to relive the entire experience over and over again. It took me a long time to feel safe again. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. I deleted all my dating apps, and I haven't been on a date since. I'm not sure if I ever will be. It's hard to trust people after something like that. You meet someone online, you think you know them, but you really have no idea who they are or what they're capable of. Hinge was supposed to be different, designed to be deleted. But for me, it opened a door to a nightmare I'm still trying to wake up from. I guess the whole thing just shows you that the internet is a crazy place. Next. Okay, so, imagine this. You re-scrolling through Hinge, right? Just minding your own business, swiping left and right, judging people based on, 3 pictures and a witty bio. I was doing that one boring Tuesday night, not really expecting anything, when I saw him. His name was Leo, and his profile was different. Not in a bad way, at least not at first. He had this whole artist vibe going on. Pictures of him painting these really intense landscapes, shots of him in a studio covered in paint splatters, and one of him playing guitar in what looked like a dimly lit underground club. He seemed mysterious, creative, and kinda hot. His bio was even more intriguing. It just said, "Looking for someone to get lost with." No cheesy pickup lines, no generic interests. Just that one enigmatic sentence. I was hooked. I swiped right, fully expecting him to ignore me. But within minutes, we matched. The messages started flowing instantly. He wasn't too into small talk, which I kinda appreciated. He asked me about my dreams, my fears, what made me feel alive. It was intense, but also kinda refreshing. I'd been on so many boring dates with guys who just wanted to talk about sports or their jobs. Leo was different. He actually seemed interested in me. We talked for hours that night, and by the end of it, we'd made plans to meet up the next day. He suggested this weird little coffee shop on the outskirts of town, a place I'd never even heard of. It was called the Crooked Kettle, and he said it had the best chai lattes in the city. I was a little hesitant, meeting someone from Hinge at a random place I didn't know. But I was also intrigued. I figured, what the heck, it's just coffee. The next day, I drove out to the Crooked Kettle. It was even weirder in person than I imagined. The building was old and dilapidated, with peeling paint and boarded-up windows. The sign outside was faded and crooked, and the whole place just had this unsettling vibe. I almost turned around, but then I saw Leo standing outside, waiting for me. He looked even better in person. Tall, dark hair, intense eyes that seemed to see right through me. He was wearing a paint-splattered jacket and ripped jeans, looking every bit the tortured artist. He smiled when he saw me, and all my reservations melted away. We went inside, and the place was even stranger than the outside. It was dimly lit, with mismatched furniture and dusty shelves filled with antique teacups and creepy dolls. The only other people, there were a couple of old guys huddled in a corner, whispering to each other. It felt like stepping into a movie scene. Leo ordered us chai lattes, and we sat down at a small table by the window. The conversation flowed easily, just like it had online. We talked about art, music, and our shared love of weird, offbeat things. He was charming, intelligent, and genuinely seemed interested in everything I had to say. I was starting to fall for him, hard. After a couple of hours, he suggested we go for a walk in the nearby park. It was getting dark, but I was having such a good time that I didn't hesitate. We strolled through the park, talking and laughing, enjoying the cool evening air. Then, he started getting weird. He started telling me about this special place he knew, a hidden spot in the woods where he went to find inspiration. He said it was beautiful and secluded, and that he wanted to share it with me. I was hesitant. It was getting late, and I didn't really want to go wandering off into the woods with a guy I barely knew. But he was so persuasive, so insistent, that I eventually gave in. He led me off the main path and into the darkness of the woods. The trees were thick and the undergrowth was dense, making it difficult to see. The only light came from the moon filtering through the leaves. As we walked deeper into the woods, the atmosphere changed. It felt colder, more oppressive. I could hear strange noises all around me, rustling in the bushes, snapping twigs, and the distant hooting of an owl. I started to get a bad feeling, a sense of dread that I couldn't shake. I asked Leo how much further it was, but he just smiled and said, "Almost there." He picked up his pace, pulling me along with him. I stumbled and struggled to keep up, my anxiety growing with every step. Finally, we arrived at his special place. It was a small clearing in the woods, surrounded by towering trees. In the center of the clearing was a strange, circular structure made of stones. It looked ancient, like something out of a pagan ritual. He told me the place was magical and that he felt a deep connection to it. He started talking about spirits and energies and things that I didn't understand. I was starting to get really freaked out. I told him I wanted to go home, but he just laughed and said, "Not yet." He grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the stone structure. I tried to resist, but he was too strong. He forced me to stand in the center of the circle, and then he started chanting in a language I didn't recognize. The air grew thick and heavy, and I felt a strange tingling sensation all over my body. The trees around us seemed to sway and whisper, and the moon became obscured by dark clouds. I was terrified, convinced that something terrible was about to happen. Then he pulled out a knife, a long, gleaming blade that reflected the faint moonlight. He held it up in the air and continued chanting, his eyes wild and unfocused. I screamed and tried to run, but he grabbed me and held me tight. "Tonight, we will become one," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Tonight, you will be mine forever." I closed my eyes, bracing for the worst, but then, suddenly, everything stopped. The chanting, the tingling, the swaying trees, everything just vanished. I opened my eyes and saw Leo standing there, staring at me in confusion. "What happened?" he asked, his voice sounding normal again. I don't remember. He looked genuinely bewildered, like he had no idea what had just transpired. He dropped the knife, and it clattered to the ground. I didn't waste any time. I pushed him away and ran as fast as I could, back through the woods and towards the park. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I jumped inside, locked the doors, and sped away, tears streaming down my face. I never saw Leo again. I blocked him on Hinge, deleted his number, and tried to erase him from my memory. But the image of him standing in that clearing, holding that knife, chanting those strange words, is forever burned into my mind. I still get the chills thinking about it. I still use Hinge now and again, but I will never be alone with someone again, especially someone I meet online. Next. I never thought this would happen to me, but here I am, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering if I'll ever feel safe using Hinge again. It started like any other dumb dating app story, swiping left and right while bored on the bus. I was looking for something casual, maybe a few dates, nothing serious. College was kicking my butt, and I just wanted someone to chill with. And then I matched with Liam. He seemed pretty normal, you know? Decent pictures, not too posed, not too try-hard. He had that whole artsy skater dude vibe going on, which I was kind of into at the time. His prompts were actually funny, not just the same recycled jokes everyone else was using. We started chatting, and he seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. Not just asking about my major or what I did for fun, but like, real questions about my goals and dreams. We texted for a couple of weeks before deciding to meet up. He suggested this little coffee shop near campus, which seemed like a safe, low-pressure kind of thing. I told my roommate where I was going, just in case. When I saw him walk in, I was actually kind of relieved. He looked exactly like his pictures, maybe even a little cuter in person. The date went surprisingly well. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, laughing and joking like we'd known each other forever. There wasn't any awkwardness or weirdness, just a comfortable connection. After the coffee shop, we walked around campus for a bit, just talking and enjoying the nice weather. He was really easy to be around, and I found myself actually liking him, which was a little scary. Usually, I am pretty guarded, but he made me feel comfortable and safe. He walked me back to my dorm, and we said goodnight with a hug. I was actually excited to see him again, which was a new feeling for me. We went on a few more dates over the next couple of weeks. We saw a movie, went to a concert, and even had a picnic in the park. Everything felt so easy and natural. I was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, I had actually found someone decent on a dating app. That should have been my first sign. Then, things started to get a little weird. It started small, subtle things that I probably wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't already starting to feel a little uneasy. He started showing up at places I hadn't told him I was going. Like, I'd be at the library studying, and he'd just randomly appear, saying he was in the neighborhood. Or I'd be grabbing lunch with my friends, and he'd walk by and say hi, even though I hadn't mentioned anything about it to him. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but it kept happening, more and more frequently, until it started to feel like he was following me. I tried to brush it off, told myself I was being paranoid, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Then, he started getting weirdly possessive. He'd get jealous if I mentioned hanging out with other guys, even just my platonic friends. He'd constantly text me, wanting to know where I was and what I was doing. He started getting upset if I didn't respond right away, even if I was in class or at work. It was suffocating. I tried to talk to him about it, told him I needed some space, but he didn't understand. He said he just cared about me and wanted to be with me all the time. He couldn't seem to grasp that his behavior was making me uncomfortable. One night, I was at a party with my friends. I hadn't told Liam about it because I knew he'd get jealous. I was just trying to have a good time, relax and forget about all the stress of school. But then, out of nowhere, Liam showed up. He looked furious. He stormed over to me, grabbed my arm, and started yelling at me in front of everyone. He accused me of ignoring him and flirting with other guys. It was humiliating. I tried to explain that I just needed some time to myself, but he wouldn't listen. He just kept yelling, his face red with anger. I managed to pull away from him and ran outside. I was crying and shaking, completely terrified. My friends followed me out and tried to comfort me. They told me that Liam was being completely unreasonable and that I needed to get away from him. I knew they were right. I couldn't keep letting him control my life. I decided to break up with him. I sent him a text message telling him that I couldn't see him anymore and that I needed him to leave me alone. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. He started blowing up my phone with texts and calls. He left messages on my voicemail, begging me to take him back. He even showed up at my dorm, banging on my door and yelling my name. I was scared. I didn't know what he was capable of. I started avoiding him, taking different routes to class, and staying inside as much as possible. I even considered reporting him to the campus police, but I didn't want to cause any trouble. One night, I was walking back to my dorm from a library. It was late, and the campus was deserted. I had a bad feeling, like I was being watched. I started walking faster, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I saw him. Liam was standing in the shadows, waiting for me. He stepped out into the light, his eyes fixed on me. He didn't say anything, just stared at me with this intense, unsettling look on his face. I froze, unable to move. I was terrified. I didn't know what he was going to do. He started walking towards me, slowly, deliberately. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was completely paralyzed with fear. Just as he was about to reach me, a security guard suddenly appeared. He must have seen us from a distance and realized something was wrong. He yelled at Liam to stop and ordered him to leave the campus. Liam hesitated for a moment, then turned and ran away. The security guard stayed with me until I got back to my dorm, making sure I was safe. I spent the rest of the night shaking in my bed, unable to sleep. The next day, I finally reported Liam to the campus police. They took my complaint seriously and issued a restraining order against him. He was banned from campus and ordered to stay away from me. I haven't seen him since then, but I still think about him all the time. I still have nightmares about that night. I am constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid that he'll come back. I deleted Hinge and all my other dating apps. I don't think I'll ever use them again. I am too afraid of meeting someone like Liam again. It just is not worth the risk. I thought Hinge was a way to find someone to hang out with, but it ended up being the scariest thing that happened to me. These apps are stupid anyway, all about looks and not personality. I wish these companies would implement something safer. I don't think I will ever be the same again after that night. I still get nervous when people come up behind me. It all started with a swipe, like every other disastrous dating story these days. But this wasn't just some awkward coffee date gone wrong, or a dude who catfished me with 10-year-old photos. This was full-blown, change your locks, sleep with a baseball bat under your bed kind of terrifying. And it all started on Hinge, the app that was designed to be deleted. Yeah, right. I was a college student, bored, and maybe a little too optimistic about finding someone decent online. Hinge seemed like a step up from Tinder, at least. The profiles were a little more in-depth, the prompts were supposed to spark actual conversation, and the overall vibe was less hookup central. That's where I saw Liam. He had that brooding artist thing going on, black and white photos, a vaguely philosophical bio, and answers to prompts that made him sound deep and sensitive. He said he liked hiking, old movies, and thunderstorms. All things I liked too, or at least could pretend to like for a date or two. I swiped right. He matched back, and we started chatting. The first few days were normal. We talked about classes, music, and our favorite places in town. He seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me, which was already a win compared to some of the other guys I talked to. He wasn't pushy. He wasn't overtly flirty, just nice. Maybe a little too nice. Like he was trying really hard to make a good first impression. But I brushed it off. Figured he was just a good guy. We made plans to meet up for a hike at a local state park. It was a pretty popular spot, lots of trails, usually crowded with people. I figured even if the date was terrible, at least I'd get some exercise and fresh air. I told my roommate where I was going and who I was meeting, sent her a screenshot of his profile, the whole 9 yards. Safety first, right? Liam was already waiting at the trailhead when I arrived. He was taller than I expected, and a little too thin, like he hadn't eaten a decent meal in weeks. He had this intense gaze that made me a little uneasy, but I chalked it up to nerves. He greeted me with a smile, and we started off on the trail. The hike started out fine. We talked about the scenery, made small talk about our lives, nothing too deep. He asked a lot of questions about me, about my family, where I lived, what I did in my spare time. I answered them without thinking too much about it. I was just trying to be friendly. But as we got further into the park, the trail became less crowded. We veered off onto a smaller path, one that I hadn't been on before. It was quieter, more secluded, and the trees were thick, blocking out most of the sunlight. That's when things started to feel off. Liam started acting strange. He stopped making eye contact, became more quiet, and kept looking over his shoulder like someone was following us. I asked him if he was okay, but he just shrugged and said he was fine. Then he started talking about the woods, about how peaceful they were, how easy it would be to get lost, how nobody would ever find you if you didn't want to be found. It was creepy, unsettling, and I started to feel a knot form in my stomach. I told him I wanted to turn back, that I wasn't feeling well. He didn't say anything, just kept walking deeper into the woods. I had to practically beg him to turn around. Finally, he agreed, but he didn't seem happy about it. The hike back was silent and tense. I kept my distance from him, trying to avoid any physical contact. I just wanted to get out of there. When we finally reached the trailhead, I practically ran to my car. I made some excuse about having to get home, thanked him for the hike, and sped off. I didn't even wait to see if he was watching me. I just wanted to put as much distance between us as possible. I thought that was the end of it. A bad date, a creepy guy, lesson learned. But it wasn't. Over the next few days, I started getting weird messages from Liam. Not overtly threatening, but persistent. He would text me at all hours of the night, asking if I was okay, saying he was worried about me, telling me he wanted to see me again. I ignored them, blocked his number, and tried to forget about him. But he didn't give up. He started creating new profiles on Hinge, messaging me with different names and photos. I blocked those too, but it was like playing whack-a-mole. Every time I blocked one, another would pop up. Then, he started finding me on other social media platforms. Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. It was like he was stalking me, trying to find every possible way to contact me. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I told my roommate everything, and she urged me to go to the police. But I didn't have any proof, just a bunch of creepy messages. I was afraid they wouldn't take me seriously. So, I tried to handle it on my own. I changed all my social media settings, made everything private, and stopped going out alone. I felt like I was living in a prison, constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid of who might be watching me. One night, I was sitting in my apartment, trying to study, when I heard a noise outside my window. I looked out, and there he was. Liam was standing in the parking lot, staring up at my window. He didn't say anything, just stood there, watching. I slammed the curtains shut and called the police. They came and took him away, but they said they couldn't do much since he hadn't actually done anything illegal. They gave him a warning and told him to stay away from me. I didn't feel safe. I knew he wouldn't stop. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I dropped out of school, packed my bags, and moved back home with my parents. I changed my number, deleted all my social media accounts, and tried to disappear. I was terrified of what might happen if he found me again. It's been a year since then, and I haven't heard from Liam. I don't know if he's still out there, looking for me, or if he's moved on to someone else. I still have nightmares about him, about the woods, about the feeling of being watched. I haven't been on a dating app since. Maybe someday I'll be brave enough to try again, but for now, I'm content to stay hidden. This whole thing taught me about the dark side of online dating. It's easy to create a fake persona, to hide behind a screen, to present a version of yourself that isn't real. You never really know who you're talking to, who you're meeting, who you're letting into your life. And sometimes, the consequences can be devastating. It opened my eyes to how easily one can manipulate. It made me appreciate how valuable privacy is. Most of all, it taught me to always trust my gut. If something feels off, even a little bit, it probably is. And it's better to be safe than sorry, even if it means deleting an app that was designed to be deleted. That day, I learned a valuable lesson about online safety and the importance of trusting your instincts. Next, suggested profile on Hinge. You know the ones where the app tells you this person is your most compatible based on some algorithm only Hinge knows. Her name was Sarah, and her profile was, well, normal. That was the first red flag, honestly. In the sea of carefully curated travel pics and try-hard quirky bios, Sarah's felt real. A blurry picture of her laughing with friends, a hiking shot where she looked genuinely windswept, and a bio that just said she was looking for someone to watch bad movies with. I was bored, swiping mindlessly on a Tuesday night, so I sent her a message about her favorite bad movie. That's how it all began. I was fresh out of a pretty messy breakup, not really looking for anything serious, but open to meeting new people. Sarah seemed cool, down to earth. We messaged back and forth for a few days, the conversation flowing easily. She wasn't trying too hard, wasn't playing games. We talked about our jobs, she was a teacher, our families, our shared love of obscure documentaries. Everything felt easy, natural. Maybe too easy. After about a week of chatting, we decided to meet up for coffee. She suggested a little cafe near my apartment, a place I went all the time. That should have been a clue, maybe. The coffee date was fine. Not amazing, not terrible, just fine. She looked like her pictures, maybe a little less polished in person, which I actually liked. We talked for a couple of hours, about everything and nothing. There weren't any awkward silences, but there wasn't any spark either. It felt more like hanging out with a friend than a potential date. But she seemed interested, and I was still lonely and wanted to get out of the apartment. So, when she suggested we grab dinner sometime, I said yes. Dinner was at a trendy Italian place downtown. Again, the conversation was good, but there was something off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. She kept asking questions about my apartment, where it was located, how long I'd lived there, if I had a roommate. Harmless enough. But she kept circling back to it, like she was trying to get a sense of the layout or security. After dinner, she insisted on walking me home. I lived only a few blocks away, so it wasn't a big deal, but it felt a little unnecessary. As we walked, she kept glancing around, like she was taking in the neighborhood. We got to my building, and she lingered for a moment, looking up at the windows. "Nice place," she said, her voice a little too casual. "Good location." I said goodnight, gave her a quick hug, and went inside. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me, even after I was safely inside my apartment. I chalked it up to nerves, first date jitters. I texted her to say I had a good time, and she texted back almost immediately, saying she did too, and that we should do it again soon. I didn't reply. The next day, I started noticing things. Small things, easily explained away. A light flickering in the hallway. A strange noise coming from the apartment above me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I started checking my locks more often, closing my blinds, being more aware of my surroundings. Then the messages started. Not from Sarah, but from an unknown number. Just simple, innocuous things at first. "Hope you're having a good day. Thinking about our dinner last night." I blocked the number, but the messages kept coming from different numbers. It was unnerving. I started to panic. One evening, I came home from work to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart leaped into my throat. I cautiously pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment was silent, but something was definitely wrong. Things were out of place. A picture frame knocked over. A cushion askew on the couch. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and slowly made my way through the apartment, checking every room. I found her in my bedroom. She was sitting on my bed, calmly flipping through a magazine. "Sarah." She looked up when I walked in, a serene smile on her face. "Hey," she said, like she was just waiting for me. I let myself in. "Hope you don't mind." I was stunned, speechless. "What the hell are you doing here?" I finally managed to stammer out. Her smile widened. "I just wanted to surprise you," she said. "I've been thinking about you all day." I took a step closer, the baseball bat raised. "How did you get in here?" She tilted her head, her eyes glinting in the dim light. "Oh, that was easy," she said. "You really should get a better lock." It was then that I saw the pictures. Spread out on my dresser were photos of me. Sleeping, walking my dog, going to work. Photos taken through my windows. Photos taken from across the street. Photos taken without my knowledge. I lowered the bat, my hands shaking. I felt like I was going to throw up. "I know everything about you," she said, her voice soft, almost hypnotic. "Your schedule, your friends, your favorite coffee. I've been watching you for a while now. I knew we were meant to be together the moment I saw your profile on Hinge." I don't know what happened next, exactly. I remember yelling, telling her to get out. I remember her standing up, her eyes filled with a manic intensity. I remember pushing her, shoving her out of the apartment. I remember slamming the door shut and locking it, my hands trembling so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. I called the police, of course. They took a report, but they didn't seem to take me seriously. They said it was probably just a misunderstanding, a crazy date gone wrong. They said they'd look into it, but I knew they wouldn't. I didn't stay in my apartment that night. I went to a friend's place, terrified to be alone. I spent the next few days jumping at every shadow, checking every lock, convinced that Sarah was still out there, watching me. I deleted Hinge, deleted all my dating apps. I never wanted to go on another date again. I eventually moved, changed my number, got a new job. I tried to forget about Sarah, tried to put it behind me. But it's hard to forget something like that. It's hard to trust people after something like that. Every time I meet someone new, every time I go on a date, I can't help but wonder if they're watching me too. It was just a Hinge match, a harmless coffee date. That's what makes it so terrifying. It could happen to anyone. It could happen to you. The world is so crazy these days. Next. I swiped right on Sarah's profile, only to realize a week later I'd unlocked a real-life horror movie. Like, I should have known. Hinge always feels like a step up from Tinder, right? Supposedly more relationship-oriented. But honestly, it's still the internet. And the internet is where all the weirdos congregate. I should have stuck to my usual routine of just casually browsing through the profiles. It was late one night, and I was bored, laying down on my bed. Anyway, Sarah. She had the cute, quirky thing going on. Pictures of her hiking, volunteering at an animal shelter, and a really cool one where she was dressed up as Velma from Scooby-Doo. Her prompts were funny and self-deprecating. Seemed like someone I'd actually enjoy grabbing a coffee with. That was my first mistake, thinking I knew someone based on a dating profile. We matched almost instantly, and she messaged me first. "Hey, love the picture of you at the concert. Who were you seeing?" It felt easy, natural. We messaged back and forth for a few days, talking about music, movies, and our shared love of dogs. She seemed normal, maybe a little too eager, but hey, who am I to judge? I was looking for a connection, too. We made plans to meet up at a local coffee shop. I was actually excited, which was rare for me. Usually, dates feel like a chore, but Sarah genuinely seemed interesting. I even put on my good jeans and a decent shirt. When I got to the coffee shop, she was already there, sitting at a table near the window. She looked even better in person. Bright eyes, a warm smile, and she was wearing this cool vintage jacket that I immediately complimented. The first hour was amazing. We talked about everything and nothing, laughing and making eye contact. It felt like we'd known each other for years. Then things slowly started getting awkward. She started asking really personal questions. Like, way too personal for a first date. Questions about my family, my past relationships, my insecurities. I tried to deflect, keep the conversation light, but she was persistent. It felt like an interrogation more than a date. Then she started talking about my social media. She mentioned specific posts I'd made on Instagram and Facebook, even ones I'd forgotten about. It was creepy, like she'd been stalking me. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just being thorough. She was probably looking at my social media. But then she started mentioning things I hadn't posted anywhere. Things I'd only told a few close friends in private conversations. Things that would be impossible for her to know unless she was actively spying on me. That's when the dread started to creep in. I felt this cold, sinking feeling in my stomach, like I was trapped in a bad dream. I started scanning the coffee shop, looking for an escape route. I needed to get out of there. I made an excuse about having to leave early, something about a family emergency. She didn't seem surprised, just gave me this knowing smile. "It was great meeting you," she said, her voice too sweet, too innocent. "I'll be in touch." I practically sprinted out of the coffee shop, jumped in my car, and sped away. I didn't breathe easy until I was back in my apartment. Doors locked, blinds closed. I felt violated, exposed. How did she know those things about me? Was I being watched? I spent the next few days obsessively checking my social media, changing my passwords, and covering my laptop camera with tape. I felt like I was living in a spy movie, except I was the target. I even looked up Sarah online, trying to find out more about her. But there was nothing. No social media profiles, no job history, no public records. It was like she didn't exist. That made it even worse. If she didn't exist online, who was she? And what did she want? The scratching sound. I heard the scratching sound from my walls. A week went by, and I started to relax, to think I was overreacting. Maybe she was just a weirdo with a knack for research. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But then I got a package in the mail. It was a small, unmarked box. I hesitated before opening it, a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. When I finally tore it open, I almost threw up. Inside was a collection of photos. Photos of me. Photos of me sleeping in my apartment. Photos of me walking to my car. Photos of me inside my own home, doing mundane things like watching TV and eating dinner. The photos were high quality, taken from different angles, like someone had been watching me for a long time. On the back of each photo, there was a single word written in red ink. The words formed a sentence. "I always keep my promises." I went crazy. The dread I felt escalated quickly. It was no longer a movie or a paranoia. I was being followed. I called the police, showed them the photos, told them everything. They took a report, but they didn't seem to take me seriously. "It could be anyone," one of the officers said. "You meet people online all the time. It's probably just a prank." I knew it wasn't a prank. I knew it was Sarah, and I knew she wasn't going to stop. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't live like this, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when she was going to strike. I remembered she'd mentioned volunteering at an animal shelter. I decided to check it out, to see if I could find her, to confront her. It was a long shot, but I was desperate. I drove to the shelter, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I got there, I walked inside, trying to act casual. I scanned the faces of the volunteers, but I didn't see her. I started to lose hope, to think I was wasting my time. But then I heard a voice. "Can I help you find a furry friend?" I turned around, and there she was. Sarah. She was wearing a volunteer uniform, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, smiling at me like she hadn't been terrorizing me for the past week. I felt a surge of anger, a burning rage that threatened to consume me. "You," I said, my voice trembling. "You've been stalking me." Her smile faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. "Stalking? I prefer the term admiration," she said, her voice low and menacing. I lunged at her, grabbing her by the arm. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. "What do you want?" She laughed, a chilling, unsettling sound. "I want you," she said. "I want you all to myself." Before I could react, she pulled a small knife from her pocket and lunged at me. I screamed, dodging the blade, and stumbled backward. We struggled for a moment, grappling for control of the knife. I managed to knock it out of her hand, sending it clattering to the floor. She screamed and kicked me at my feet as I struggled to get up. That's when one of the other volunteers intervened, pulling her away from me. The police arrived a few minutes later, sirens blaring. They arrested Sarah, and I gave them a statement. It turned out she had a history of obsessive behavior and had been stalking other men she'd met online. They found more photos in her apartment, along with a detailed plan of how she was going to make me hers. I pressed charges, and she was eventually convicted of stalking and assault. She's in prison now, hopefully for a long time. But even though she's behind bars, I still can't shake the feeling that she's watching me. I still have nightmares about her, about the photos, about the knife. Hinge might seem like a better option for those of us looking for a relationship, but it's still the internet, and you never really know who's on the other side of that profile. Be careful out there. I learned that lesson the hard way. It's been years since the incident. You can never really be sure. I don't know what I felt when I got the package. It was never solved. Next. Okay, so, listen up because this is a story I still can't fully wrap my head around. It all started, like a lot of messed up stuff these days, with a dating app. Not Tinder. I was trying to be classy. Or at least appear to be. Hinge. You know, the app that's supposed to be designed to be deleted. More like designed to delete your faith in humanity. Am I right? I was in my freshman year of college, away from home for the first time, and feeling like I needed to. Like, broaden my horizons, or whatever. I hadn't had much luck in the romance department in high school, and college felt like a fresh start. Enter Hinge. I made a profile, put up some decent pics, wrote a bio that was probably trying too hard to be clever, and started swiping. I matched with a few guys, had some boring conversations, and went on a couple of awkward coffee dates. Nothing clicked. Then I matched with Liam. He seemed different. He wasn't the typical jock type that everyone was obsessed with. He was into art, music, and indie films. All the stuff I pretended to be super into to sound interesting. His profile was full of pictures of him at museums, concerts, and weird little cafes. He seemed like the kind of guy who actually had thoughts in his head, you know. We started chatting, and the conversation flowed really easily. He was funny, smart, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We talked about everything, from our favorite books to our biggest fears. He had this way of making me feel like I could tell him anything, which, looking back, was probably a huge mistake. After a week or so of talking online, we decided to meet up in person. He suggested the small, independent bookstore downtown that had a cafe inside. It sounded perfect, low-key, artsy, and a good way to get to know each other without the pressure of a fancy dinner. When I met him, he was even more attractive than his pictures. Tall, with dark hair and eyes, and a smile that could melt glaciers. He was wearing a worn-out leather jacket and a band t-shirt I didn't recognize, which, of course, made him even cooler in my eyes. We talked for hours that first night. About books, music, movies, everything. It felt like we had known each other for years. He walked me back to my dorm, and we shared a quick, awkward kiss goodnight. I was hooked. Over the next few weeks, Liam and I became inseparable. We spent all our free time together, exploring the city, going to concerts, and just hanging out at each other's places. He was everything I thought I wanted in a guy. Intelligent, funny, and passionate. He even introduced me to bands I actually liked, which was a huge plus. But then things started to get weird. Subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. He started asking me questions about my schedule, about where I was going and who I was with. At first, I thought he was just being caring, but the questions became more frequent and more detailed. He'd ask me things like, "What route did you take to get to class?" Or, "Who did you sit with at lunch?" It was like he was trying to keep tabs on me. He also started getting jealous. If I mentioned hanging out with other friends, especially guys, he'd get this dark look in his eyes and clam up. He wouldn't yell or anything, but he'd become distant and withdrawn. It was like he was punishing me for not giving him my undivided attention. Then there were the gifts. At first, they were sweet and thoughtful, a rare edition of my favorite book, a vinyl record from a band we both loved. But then they started getting stranger. A small, antique music box that played a haunting melody. A vintage photograph of a woman I didn't recognize, with a creepy inscription on the back. A lock of hair, supposedly from his grandmother. It was like he was trying to create this weird, gothic romance with me, and I was starting to feel increasingly uncomfortable. I tried talking to him about it, about how I felt like he was being too controlling and how the gifts were making me uneasy. But he'd just brush it off, saying that I was overreacting and that he was just trying to show me how much he cared. He'd turn on the charm, apologize profusely, and promise to do better. And for a little while, things would go back to normal. But then the cycle would start all over again. The turning point came one night when I was studying late in the library. I told him I'd be there until around midnight, and he said he was going to a concert with some friends. Around 11 p.m., I got a text from him saying he was outside the library and wanted to see me for a minute. I was surprised, but I figured he just wanted to say goodnight. I went outside, and there he was, standing in the shadows near the entrance. He looked different than usual. His eyes were wild, his hair was disheveled, and he was wearing a long, dark coat that made him look even taller and more imposing. He pulled me into a tight hug, and I could feel him trembling. "I needed to see you," he whispered in my ear. "I couldn't stand the thought of you being here without me." I tried to pull away, but he held me tighter. "I know you've been pulling away from me," he said, his voice strained. "I know you don't trust me anymore, but I promise, I'll do anything to make you happy. Just tell me what you want, and I'll do it." I was starting to get really scared. I could feel the intensity radiating off him, and I knew that something was seriously wrong. "Liam, I need you to let me go," I said, my voice trembling. "I need you to give me some space." He didn't say anything. He just stared at me with those dark, intense eyes. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small and shiny. It was a knife. Not a big, menacing knife, but a small pocket knife. But it was enough to send a jolt of pure terror through my body. "I just wanted to protect you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to keep you safe." He started moving the knife closer to me, and I screamed. I don't know what happened next. Everything went blurry. I remember pushing him away, running back inside the library, and calling campus security. They arrived within minutes and took Liam into custody. I found out later that he had been stalking me for weeks. He had been following me to class, hacking into my email and social media accounts, and even breaking into my dorm room while I was away. The knife was just the final straw. I pressed charges, and he was eventually convicted of stalking and harassment. He's still in prison, as far as I know. I transferred to another college, changed my number, and deleted all my social media accounts. It's been a few years since then, but I still have nightmares. I still jump at every shadow and flinch at every unexpected noise. I haven't used a dating app since, and I don't think I ever will. I was so young and trusting, and I completely misread the situation. I thought I was finding love, but I was actually stumbling into a nightmare. So yeah, that's my Hinge horror story. And trust me, it's not something I'll ever forget. I don't usually share stuff like this, but I need to get it off my chest, and maybe hearing I'm not the only idiot out there will help. So, I met this girl on Hinge, right? Name was Sarah. Seemed totally normal. Like hiking pics, book recommendations, the whole 9 yards. We matched, chatted for a bit, and honestly, she seemed cool. Not drop-dead gorgeous, but cute, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. That's where it all started. We talked about everything. Our families, our dreams, our favorite kinds of pizza. It felt easy, natural. After a week or so, we decided to meet up. I was actually excited, you know. I hadn't felt that way about someone I met online in a long time. I picked this chill little coffee shop downtown that I love. It's got good vibes, good coffee, and it's usually pretty quiet during the day. Seemed like the perfect spot for a first date. She showed up right on time. Looked exactly like her photos, maybe even a little cuter in person. We hugged, got our coffees, and sat down at a table by the window. The conversation was even better in person than it was online. We laughed a lot, shared stories, and just generally clicked. I was starting to think, okay, maybe this is something special. After a couple of hours, we decided to take a walk. We strolled around downtown, checking out the shops, people watching, just enjoying each other's company. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. It was all very cliché, but in a good way. As we were walking, she mentioned that she lived just a few blocks away and asked if I wanted to come back to her place for a bit. Now, normally, I'm not one to jump into things too quickly, but something about Sarah made me feel comfortable, at ease. I figured, what the heck? It's just coffee, right? So I said yes. We walked to her apartment, which was in an older building with a lot of character. It was on the 3rd floor, and as we walked in, I noticed a few things right away. It was kind of dim, even though it was the middle of the day, and it smelled faintly of incense. Not overpowering, just a subtle, almost musky scent. The apartment was decorated in a way that was interesting. Lots of antique furniture, old books, and strange little trinkets. It felt like stepping back in time, almost like being in a museum. Sarah seemed to notice me taking it all in. She laughed and said she was a bit of a hoarder. I chuckled and told her it was unique. We sat down on our couch, and she offered me some water. As she went to the kitchen, I took a look around. That's when I started noticing the pictures. Lots and lots of pictures. All of them were old, black and white, and featured people I didn't recognize. Some were portraits, others were group shots, but they all had this eerie quality to them. Like the people in the photos were staring right through me. Sarah came back with the water, and I asked her about the pictures. She said they were family photos, relatives from way back when. I didn't pry, but something about the way she said it felt off, like she was hiding something. We chatted for a bit longer, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The atmosphere in the apartment had shifted. It felt heavier, more oppressive. Then, she asked if I wanted to see something really cool. She had this mischievous look in her eyes, and I hesitated for a second. My gut was telling me to leave, but curiosity got the better of me. I said, "Sure, what is it?" She smiled and led me down a narrow hallway to a door at the end. She pulled out a key, unlocked the door, and pushed it open. Inside was a small room, barely bigger than a closet. It was completely empty except for a single chair in the center. The walls were painted black, and the only light came from a small, flickering candle. It felt cold in there, like the temperature had dropped suddenly. I looked at Sarah, confused. "What is this?" I asked. She just smiled again and said, "A place for reflection." She gestured for me to sit in the chair. I really didn't want to, but I felt like I couldn't say no. I sat down, and she closed the door behind me. Suddenly, I was plunged into darkness. The only thing I could see was the faint glow of the candle. The air felt thick, suffocating. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. Then I heard Sarah's voice. It was different now, deeper, almost distorted. "Tell me your secrets," she said. "Tell me everything." I was terrified. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I needed to get out of there. I stood up and tried to open the door, but it was locked. I started banging on the door, yelling for Sarah to let me out, but she didn't answer. I kept banging and yelling, but it was no use. I was trapped. After what felt like an eternity, I heard a clicking sound, and the door opened. Sarah was standing there, holding the candle. Her face was expressionless. "Did you learn anything?" she asked. I didn't say anything. I just pushed past her and ran out of the apartment. I didn't stop running until I was back on the street, far away from that place. I never spoke to Sarah again. I blocked her number, deleted her from Hinge, and tried to forget the whole thing ever happened. But it's hard to forget something like that. To this day, I don't know what Sarah was trying to do. Was it some kind of weird psychological experiment? Was she just messing with me? Or was it something even more sinister? I have no idea. But I do know that I'll never trust someone I meet online that easily again. And I'll definitely think twice before going back to someone's place on a first date. I still use the apps, but I keep my guard up. Way up. You never know what kind of crazy you might find out there. I still have dreams of the black room. Maybe it was just a very bad day, and nothing more. This whole thing really makes me think. Next. It's a story I still can't fully wrap my head around, and it all started with a dating app, Hinge. Yeah, I know. It's supposed to be the app designed to be deleted. But for me, it almost ended up deleting something way more important. This isn't some urban legend or creepypasta. This is something that really messed with my head. I was in my junior year of college, living in a small town nestled in the mountains of Colorado. Think ski resorts, hiking trails, and a whole lot of craft breweries. It's a great place, but dating options were, let's just say, limited. Hinge seemed like the perfect solution to expand my horizons beyond the usual suspects. I wasn't looking for anything super serious, just someone to grab a beer with and maybe go on a hike every now and then. That's when I matched with Ethan. His profile was pretty standard. A couple of pictures of him snowboarding, of course, one with his dog, and a prompt about his favorite hiking spot near Telluride. He seemed outdoorsy, laid back, and genuinely nice. We started chatting, and he was witty, engaging, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We talked about our favorite bands, hiking trails, and the best spots for après ski. He was everything I thought I wanted in a guy. After a week or so of chatting, we decided to meet up. He suggested this little brewery on the edge of town, away from the main touristy area. It seemed like a good spot, low-key, not too crowded, and with a decent beer selection. I was actually excited, which was rare for me when it came to dating apps. When I arrived, Ethan was already there, sitting at a table near the back. He looked just like his pictures, maybe even a little better in person. He had this easy smile and a way of making eye contact that made me feel instantly comfortable. We ordered beers and started talking, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about everything and nothing, our families, our dreams, our fears. I was actually having a really good time. But then things started to get a little weird. He started asking me questions about my apartment. Not in a creepy way, but just general stuff, like how long I'd lived there, if I had any roommates, what floor I was on. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, it was definitely a little too much information to ask on a first date. Then, he started talking about this project he was working on. He was vague about the details, but he mentioned something about studying human behavior and the way people react in different situations. He said he was really passionate about it and that it was taking up most of his time. Again, I didn't think much of it at the time, but it definitely struck me as odd. As the night went on, he became more and more intense. His eyes seemed to darken, and his smile seemed less genuine. He started asking me questions about my schedule, when I usually left for class, when I came home, if I had any regular activities. I started to feel a little uncomfortable, but I chalked it up to first date jitters. When it was time to leave, he offered to walk me home. I hesitated, but I didn't want to seem rude, so I agreed. As we walked, he continued to ask me questions about my apartment and my routine. He even started suggesting ways I could improve my security, like getting a better lock or installing a security camera. I was getting seriously creeped out at this point, but I tried to play it cool. When we got to my apartment building, I quickly said goodbye and practically ran inside. I locked the door behind me and immediately felt a wave of relief. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously off about Ethan. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I kept replaying the date in my head, trying to figure out what had made me so uneasy. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much personal information I had given him. I knew he knew where I lived, what my schedule was, and that I lived alone. It was a terrifying realization. I decided to do some digging. I started by searching for him on social media, but I couldn't find anything. No Facebook, no Instagram, no LinkedIn. It was like he didn't exist. That's when I started to panic. I decided to do a reverse image search on his Hinge profile picture. And that's when things got really messed up. The picture came back to a stock photo website. It was a picture of some random guy, not Ethan at all. I felt sick to my stomach. I immediately blocked him on Hinge and reported his profile. But I knew that wasn't enough. I was convinced that he was still out there, watching me. I started being extra careful, checking my locks, looking over my shoulder, and avoiding walking alone at night. One evening, I was coming home from the library when I noticed a figure standing across the street from my apartment building. It was dark, and I couldn't see his face clearly, but he was wearing the same jacket that Ethan had worn on our date. My heart started pounding in my chest. I quickly ducked into a nearby coffee shop and called the police. They arrived within minutes and searched the area, but they couldn't find anyone matching Ethan's description. They took my statement, but they couldn't do much without any concrete evidence. I was terrified. I knew I couldn't stay in my apartment anymore. I packed my bags and drove to my parents' house, a few hours away. I stayed there for a few weeks, trying to process what had happened. When I finally returned to college, I moved into a different apartment building, one with better security and more people around. I also started seeing a therapist to deal with the anxiety and paranoia that had taken over my life. I never heard from Ethan again, and I never found out who he really was or what his intentions were. But that has left a permanent mark on me. I'm much more cautious about who I meet online, and I'm always aware of my surroundings. It serves as a constant reminder of how easily things can go wrong, and how important it is to trust your instincts. To this day, I still get a chill when I think about him and how easily I could have been in real danger. It's a harsh reminder that behind those filtered profiles and witty banter, there could be someone with sinister intentions, lurking just beneath the surface. And that, more than anything, is the scariest part. Next. Okay, so I'm usually not one to spill my guts online, but seriously, I need to get this off my chest. It all started with Hinge. Yeah, the dating app designed to be deleted. Ironic, right? Because deleting the app is the last thing I want to do right now, but not for the reasons you'd think. I mean, most people use it for dates, hookups, maybe even finding the one. Me. I think I accidentally found a legit stalker, and it's all thanks to that stupid app. I was bored last summer, freshly single. All my friends were coupled up, and my Netflix queue was starting to look depressing. I figured, why not? Downloaded Hinge, made a profile with some kinda cute, if I do say so myself, pics, and started swiping. It was mostly the same old stuff. Guys trying too hard, guys with terrible bios, guys who clearly hadn't updated their pictures since high school. But then I saw his profile. Liam. His pictures were normal. Like, actual pictures of him doing normal things. One of him hiking, another at a baseball game, and one of him laughing with some friends at a bar. His bio was simple too. Just looking for someone to explore the city with. Bonus points if you like cheesy pizza and bad puns. Okay, cheesy pizza and bad puns? I am in. We matched, and I actually got a good feeling. He wasn't overly aggressive or trying to be cool. He just seemed genuine. We chatted for a few days, talking about everything and nothing. He asked about my job, my hobbies, my favorite pizza toppings, obviously pepperoni. We even bonded over our mutual love of terrible reality TV. Seriously, things were going great. I was actually starting to get excited about the possibility of, an actual date. So, when he asked me out for coffee, I said yes without hesitation. The coffee date was perfect. He was even more attractive in person, and he had this way of making me feel completely comfortable. We talked for hours, laughing and joking like we'd known each other forever. It felt easy. Too easy, maybe. But I ignored that little voice in the back of my head. I was having too much fun. We went on a few more dates after that. A movie, a concert in the park, even a spontaneous trip to the beach. Each time, I liked him more and more. He seemed to really listen when I talked, and he always remembered the little things I told him. It was like he was paying super close attention to everything I said and did. Again, that little voice in my head tried to warn me, but I just pushed it aside. I was too caught up in the honeymoon phase. That's when things started to get weird. It started small. He would randomly show up at places I mentioned I was going. Like, if I told him I was grabbing lunch at that new taco place downtown, he'd happen to be there too. Or if I said I was going for a run in the park, he'd coincidentally be running there as well. At first, I thought it was cute. Like, he was trying to be thoughtful and spend more time with me. But then it started happening more and more frequently. Then there was the knowing. He started knowing things he shouldn't have known. Like, one time I mentioned I was thinking about dyeing my hair, and the next day he texted me a picture of the exact color I was considering. Or another time, I was complaining about a problem I was having at work, and he somehow knew all the details, even though I hadn't told him everything. It was like he was inside my head. I tried to brush it off, told myself I was just being paranoid, but the feeling of unease kept growing. I started feeling like I was being watched, like someone was always there, just out of sight, observing my every move. One night, I was home alone, watching TV, when I got a text from Liam. "Thinking about you," it said. Simple, right? But something about it felt off. I looked out my window, and there he was, standing across the street, staring up at my apartment. He saw me looking and waved. I quickly closed the curtains, my heart pounding in my chest. Okay, that was it. That was the moment I realized something was seriously wrong. This wasn't cute or thoughtful. This was straight up creepy. I started avoiding him. I stopped answering his calls and texts. I made excuses when he asked me to hang out, but he didn't get the hint. He kept trying, kept showing up, kept texting. It was relentless. I finally decided to confront him. I met him at a public park, hoping that being in a crowded place would make me feel safer. I told him that I needed some space, that I wasn't ready for a serious relationship. I tried to be gentle, but firm. He didn't take it well. He started arguing with me, telling me that we were meant to be together, that he knew me better than anyone else ever could. He said that he was just trying to show me how much he cared, that he didn't mean to scare me. But his eyes, they were cold, empty. He wasn't the sweet, charming guy I had met on Hinge. This was someone else. I told him to leave me alone, that I never wanted to see him again. I turned and walked away as fast as I could. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The stalking escalated. He started leaving gifts on my doorstep. Weird, unsettling things like a single rose with the thorns still attached, or a framed picture of me sleeping. I have no idea how he got that. He started sending me emails with cryptic messages and disturbing images. He even started calling me in the middle of the night, just breathing into the phone. I was terrified. I changed my number, blocked him on all social media, and even considered moving. I felt like I was living in a horror movie. One night, I came home from work and found my apartment door unlocked. I slowly pushed it open, my hand shaking. The apartment was empty, but it was clear someone had been there. My things were scattered everywhere, and there was a message written on my mirror in red lipstick. "You can hide from me." That's when I went to the police. I showed them the texts, the emails, the gifts, everything. They took me seriously, but they said there wasn't much they could do until he actually harmed me. They told me to get a restraining order, which I did. But honestly, I don't think a piece of paper is going to stop him. I am still scared. I jump at every sound. I check my locks a million times a day. I am constantly looking over my shoulder. I feel like I am living in a constant state of anxiety. I regret downloading Hinge every single day. I regret swiping right on Liam. I regret ever giving him the time of day. It's like I opened a door to something dark and sinister, and now I can't close it. The scariest part? I know this isn't over. I can feel it. He's still out there, watching, waiting, and I have no idea what he's going to do next. I am scared for my life. This is a true story, and it really happened to me. I am not secure at home anymore. Next. I'm usually pretty good at spotting weirdos, but this guy was a whole other level of messed up, and I didn't even see it coming until it was way too late. You think you know how to swipe right, how to spot a catfish, how to have a casual convo, but this dude, he played the long game, and I'm still not sure what his endgame even was. I'm Mark, by the way, a totally average dude living in a boring suburb, and I use Tinder mostly because everyone else was. I'd been on Tinder for a while, mostly just swiping through faces during boring lectures or when I was just killing time. Met some cool people, went on some forgettable dates, the usual. Nothing crazy, nothing that stuck with me. Then I matched with Liam. Liam's profile was different. Not in a bad way, just curated. He had like 3 pictures, all black and white. One was him hiking, another was him playing guitar, and the last was a close-up of his eyes, which were crazy intense. His bio was short and kinda cryptic, looking for someone to share late-night talks and explore hidden places. Okay, a little cheesy, but I was intrigued. We started talking, and he was surprisingly easy to chat with. He wasn't pushy, didn't ask for my number right away, and actually seemed interested in what I had to say. We talked about music, movies, and stuff we wanted to do. He had this way of making even the most mundane things sound interesting. He had this strange draw. After a week or so of chatting, he suggested we meet up. He didn't suggest a specific place. That was my first mistake. He told me to drive to this address, and he will take me somewhere, and I agreed. I can't believe I agreed. The address was a little ways out of town, near the old steel mill. It was the middle of the day, so I wasn't too worried. I pulled up, and Liam was standing there waiting. He was even taller in person, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to change color depending on the light. He smiled, and I'm not going to lie, I felt a little weak in the knees. He got in the car, and we drove for what felt like forever. He wouldn't tell me where we were going, just said it was a surprise. We drove further and further away from the city, past farms and fields, until we were on a dirt road, surrounded by trees. I was starting to feel a little uneasy. We eventually pulled up to this old, abandoned-looking house. It was falling apart, with broken windows and overgrown weeds. It was something out of a horror movie. What is this place? I asked, my voice a little shaky. I told you. I like to explore hidden places, he said with a smirk. He got out of the car, and I reluctantly followed. We walked around the house, and he started telling me about its history. Apparently, it used to belong to a wealthy family who had mysteriously disappeared, and the house had been abandoned ever since. Honestly, I was not feeling it. I wanted to turn around and leave, but I didn't want to seem like a wimp. He seemed normal enough so far, right? So I went along with it, but my gut kept telling me something was off. We went inside the house, and it was even creepier than I imagined. Dust and cobwebs were everywhere, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew. The floorboards creaked with every step, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. Liam seemed to be enjoying himself. He was pointing out interesting details, telling stories about the family who used to live there, and generally acting like this was the most normal thing in the world. Then he took me down to the basement. The basement was dark and damp, with a dirt floor and low ceilings. There were old tools and rusted equipment scattered around, and the air was heavy with a musty smell. He showed me a hidden room behind a bookcase. It was small and windowless, with a single chair in the center. "This is where they say the family kept their secrets," he said, his voice low and serious. At this point, I was officially freaked out. I told him I wanted to leave. "Come on, don't be scared," he said, his tone changing. "I thought you were adventurous." I started to walk back upstairs, but he grabbed my arm. "Where do you think you're going?" he said, his grip tightening. His eyes were different now, darker and colder. He wasn't the same person I had been talking to online. I tried to pull away, but he was too strong. He pushed me into the hidden room and slammed the door shut. I heard him lock it from the outside. I was trapped. I started banging on the door, yelling for him to let me out, but he didn't answer. The room was pitch black, and the air was getting thick and hard to breathe. I started to panic. I sat there in the darkness for what felt like hours. I had no idea what Liam was planning or what he was going to do to me. I just knew that I was in serious danger. Eventually, I heard him open the door. He was holding a flashlight, and the beam of light blinded me for a moment. "I just wanted to see how you'd react," he said, his voice sounding almost normal again. "I didn't mean to scare you." I didn't believe him for a second. "Let me out of here," I said, my voice trembling. He smiled and held out his hand. "Come on," he said. "Let's go." I hesitated, but I had no choice. I took his hand, and he led me out of the room. We walked back upstairs and out of the house. He didn't say a word. We got back in the car, and he drove me back to my car. He still didn't say anything. I got out of his car and into mine, and he just drove off. I sat there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. I was shaken, scared, and angry. I drove home as fast as I could. When I got back, I locked all the doors and windows and didn't leave the house for days. I blocked Liam on Tinder and every other social media platform I could think of. I told my friend what happened, and they were just as freaked out as I was. I went to the police, but they said there wasn't much they could do since he hadn't actually hurt me. They took a report, but I doubt anything will come of it. I still think about Liam all the time. I wonder what he's doing, who he's talking to, and if he's done this to anyone else. The worst part is that I still don't know why. What was his motivation? Was it just a sick game? Was he trying to scare me? Was he planning something worse? I'll probably never know. I still use Tinder, but I'm a lot more cautious now. I do a reverse image search on every profile. I video chat before meeting up, and I always tell my friends where I'm going and who I'm meeting. I learned my lesson the hard way. That whole thing messed me up pretty bad. I think twice about every message I send, every profile I swipe on. It's like, I know there are normal people out there on those apps, but now I can't help but wonder which ones are hiding something twisted underneath. It's a constant state of low-level paranoia, and it all started with a stupid right swipe. I swear, I never imagined I would be telling this story.